Now, I know that many of you who've read the Leave No One Behind report were moved and inspired by Margaret's story. And I'm delighted that Margaret is joining us today in conversation with my colleague, Richard. So I'd now like to hand over to Richard and Margaret. Diolch yn fawr.
Well, hello, everyone. I think I've got the best job of the event today because I get to chat to Margaret. And as Helena said, his story was part of the Leave No One Behind report, and I'm sure that many of you have read it. And it was very moving, very inspiring. And I think it gave a real insight into, what life has been like for lots of older people throughout Wales, where they felt, the support that they relied on has kind of slipped away. And they've seen, massive changes due to the restrictions. So yeah, I'm going to ask Mary a few questions about what things have been like since she wrote the story for us. So I'm just going to jump straight in. Say welcome, Margaret.
Hello.
How are you?
Morning. I'm so glad to be here. Bore da yn Gymraeg I bawb.
It's lovely to have you here. Thank you so much for being involved today. So yeah, my first question really was, so how have you and your husband been managing since you shared your story for the report in August? Has there been anything that you've struggled with in particular over the last few months, or has there been anything that's been particularly good?
Well, we've struggled on, we've been together a long time, so we sort of mutually supportive. He asks and I do. That's the sort of thing that happens. But we've had things that go wrong. Obviously, everything does go wrong. I've had to give up driving because I've gone much weaker since I didn't feel I had the control. So I voluntarily give up driving. Went for a checkup for the cancer I had on my head there. And we found that it had to be taken from there. Hence the curly mop hasn't been cut. What else have we had awful? We couldn't get podiatry. I've had to go private now because it was 5 months for Ken and things were getting really bad, and it was 4 months for me. And we gave up on the NHS and we went to Age Concern through help through Age Concern, and we had a delightful Irish boy came, Waterford boy. But what I can't understand is if there's somebody private allowed to come in, Richard, why is it that the NHS foot care people? Because, I got problems with my right foot, which I always need because I got peripheral neuropathy, I need the nerve testing. Well, I only had the toenails done and the calluses attended to. I've not had that part of the work done. And I think that's just been abandoned. But we've all got feet, we can have false teeth, but there's nobody going to give us false feet on they go wrong. And the NHS could be looking at an epidemic of, sepsis, because that's what will arise with poor circulation and foot problems. But that's the awful bit. We've had nice things happening as well.
So could you tell us a little bit about the nice things?
Well, one good thing, I had 2 hours respite. My brother took my husband to do the graves and I was in the house on my own. Well, I felt I'd gone deaf. I didn't know what to do for about the first 20 minutes because nobody, there was no Ken noise. There was no sort of rustling in drawers and prowling around and opening and shutting doors and can I help and that sort of thing, and where is this and where is that? So that background noise went, and it was completely unnerving. I felt as if I'd been abandoned. So about an hour after they had gone, I thought, well, I better get coffee or something on for them when they came back. And they came back, and that was my 2 hours break. So that was rather nice. And then, of course, people started coming in. People who we were very wary at first, and I was asking people sort of, I got what I call my Parazone cloth, and as soon as anybody's come and gone, I'm round the handles, and like Mrs. Mop around the place having a go, But and then my cleaner came back That was a huge, wonderful day that was. And then of course I started getting in the odd bits and pieces that hadn't been done. You know, I could replace items of clothing. We got some stuff off to the charity shop. Gardener came in and sorted everything out and given us instructions, you know. And we've had the drive pressure washed, all the things that were worrying me. Like we got done it in between what I think is lockdown 1 and lockdown 2. So that's all been, it's a relief when you're having things like that done, you know.
Yeah,
and then the Tour de France came late. So we had the Tour de France sandwiches on the trolley and pedaling away, the two of us together. And lovely, enjoyed that. Nothing else much has happened except, the chapel. Oh, they've gone back in the chapel. I haven't gone back. And a lot of my older friends haven't gone back. But the chapel has done marvelously well. They've got sort of male usherettes telling the ones who are active, you know, go upstairs, and the ones who need to stay downstairs. And they've done that wonderfully well. And of course, the chapel is a big part of my support. And I can't. So, and we've all been going strong. A hilarious Zoom on a Wednesday night. We were trying to think of the Welsh last night for multitasking. So I'm sticking to multitasking.
Just to pick up on what you said about the support you get from the church there. So you said in your story that, you know, one of the things about lockdown was that it kind of pulled the rug from underneath you and your husband in terms of that support network. So could you tell us a little bit more about that network and who was in it and the ways that they helped you?
Well, overnight, you know, it wasn't only me. I'm not only speaking about me. I'm speaking for all of us. Everything we relied on, it was stopped like that. And, you know, many people didn't know where to turn. They didn't know what to do, who to ask. No one could come. Even such, you know, simple things, you just couldn't do them. Well, I rely on Doreen, my cleaner. And she, you know, I mean, this is a woman who can go through a pair of marigolds in a month. You know, she cleans you to within an inch of your life. And so I lost Doreen, and straight away we've got to clean. Now, we're not up to that. We haven't been doing it for years. And then I lost Helen coming in. Now, Helen doesn't only do the shopping. Ken is very good at pulling down the vertical blinds. So Helen comes in with a glue gun and fixes them up again. Okay. We lost things like that. My curtains couldn't be changed. My spring cleaning couldn't be done. Cupboards couldn't be done. I can't get into low cupboards, and I dare not let him go in there because things will come out and they never go back. Or he'll save them in the garage. You see, you can't let Ken loose on anything because he squirrels things and he shuffles things all around you. You don't know where things are. All that went wrong. All the hands-on stuff went. Then the gardener didn't know whether he could come, and we ended up talking through the window, you know, and he didn't know. And then I at that time, I was afraid to go outside the door. So I couldn't go and say to him, well, that needs doing, that needs doing. And Malcolm didn't quite know how the tip was going to work, so he couldn't take things. And then Clive, the window cleaner, he didn't come for a while. And then the people who come in, people who just would post letters and bring something in, or if you've forgotten something. But the worst thing is that I got a niece, age 72, and she pops over quite frequently. And to have not been able to see Lynn Ann was, I know what other people, she's not my daughter, but she's in effect. She and Helen are like a daughter and a granddaughter. And I lost those, and it was terrible. It was really awful. I felt bereft. And I know Ken relies on them. And then we had just set up a befriending service with Ken. He'd been out with a lovely man once. They went to Swansea Market, brought me home faggots and daffodils. What more can a woman ask?
Wow.
And that was all stopped, you see. And we were just getting into that. And then, of course, Elaine James, so she comes in, my support worker. Couldn't see Elaine, could speak to her on the phone, speak to her on, but it's not the same. You know, the physical. I missed the physical. I missed the interaction. I'm a people person, and to have people taken away from you and not being able to be taken out. That was awful, really. You know, it felt like the worst type of abandonment. We were like Robinson Crusoe and Man Friday, you know, bit of a sex change going on there. But that's what we were like, desert island people. And then, of course, Ken was very worried. He couldn't understand what was worried, you know, what was happening.
Yeah.
And as much as you explain to him once, an hour later, you've got to explain it all again. So I just turned it all off. And we kept looking at things like, you know, innocuous things. I know the price of every antique. Don't go selling anything before you ask me.
I'll make sure that I do. So you talked there about just before about how you managed to get people coming back in and things had started sort of moving again. So as we're kind of looking now at further restrictions and things like that, do you feel better prepared to cope with the kind of months ahead now?
I feel the inevitability of it now. I've seen it coming on. I've even got a Christmas pudding. You might not believe it, but it's arrived. It arrived yesterday. I can see this happening, rolling forward. And I've accepted it, but I am of that temperament. Other people are not of that temperament. The thing that keeps my husband and I going is that we've got a mutual sense of humor, which thank God he hasn't lost. Oh. And, you know, that keeps us going, but I am not in the house on my own. I know friends now who've anticipated this in the last week. I've got a friend who's gone up to Worcester to be with her daughter because she cannot take it anymore. She's gone before it happens. As she said to me, I've jumped out of the plane before it's crashed, she said to me. And that's where she's gone. And I don't blame her either, because it is very, very demoralizing. You're like a hermit. And you feel as if you're being punished for something you haven't done when you're on your own and people can come.
Yeah. So in one of the things you spoke about in your story was...
Are we all right?
Oh, no, that's fine. Sorry, I thought I'd lost you.
I haven't touched anything. My hands are on my knees.
Fine. That's absolutely fine. You're back. Great. Yeah. So in your story in the report, you talked about one of the good things about lockdown being that it made you knuckle down with your iPad, and you picked up some new skills on that. So I was going to say, what would you say to someone who was nervous about getting online or thought that being online wasn't for them? Because, you know, I know it's made a big difference to you staying connected with people and lots of others. So what would you say to those? What advice would you give people who may be a bit unsure?
Look on it as learning to drive a car. It is terrifying. The worst bit is getting the equipment into the house because you know nothing about it at all. Realize that you don't know anything and that you're not stupid. No one can know anything, everything. You have to ask the younger generation. And actually, the younger they are, the better they are at telling you, because they know exactly what to do and they don't give you too many explanations. They just say, put that in there, do that, press that. And you don't want to be told too many whys and wherefores. The other thing is to learn how to turn the darn thing on and off, because very often that's the worst part of it. And then learn one thing, like YouTube. Learn one thing, learn how to call yourself a bit of music and to change the music if you don't like it, and then turn it off. And keep doing that all of the time. It's only by repetition. And after all, it's only like opening a door and closing the door, isn't it, when you're doing anything? And if you do it wrong, you're by yourself. Who knows? You can't break.
Exactly, yeah.
But right, now I've got somebody now who teaches me on a Tuesday night, and her name is Amy, and she's a young mother with 2 children, and she volunteered at the beginning of lockdown because she wanted to do something, and what you could do is teach IT. So what I do is the things I haven't been able to do in a week, I got a little list for her, and we go through it. And I've learned lots of things. I've learned heaps of things. And I didn't know about what's that thing now? It can go to, not trash. What does it go to?
The recycle bin, is it?
Oh, I know all about the recycling bin
Oh,
because
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
years. But what's that other thing it can go to on the side now? It goes, emails can go straight to trash, is it? Something like
All
that.
right, okay, yeah, yeah.
I didn't know. Oh, I had a pile
More
of those
tips.
in there. I didn't see them. Well, all of that. But, it's quite exciting when you find something new. But like what I'm doing now is what I need to do. You haven't got to do it all. Nobody's going to do it all. Gosh, Bill Gates doesn't know bits of what's going on, does he? And you've got to
Exactly.
realize, you're never going to know it all. You're going to know, only learn the bit you want and use it like a tool. It's an inanimate object, and don't be afraid of it. Engage with it and, swear at it. I often have under my breath, mind, don't say it out loud, and in Welsh. So nobody can understand it between me and him. But, it's the most irritating thing to be sort of stuck there and frozen and not knowing what's going to happen next. And you think you've done something wrong, and it's not you at all. It's the way the program's been written by somebody who doesn't think like you. And then all you've got to do is then learn to think like them. And I got to that stage of philosophy now. I think, oh, well, I can't do today, I'll do tomorrow.
I think that's, really good advice for us all, isn't it, really, actually? So is there, one thing in particular, and it's probably not, it's probably lots of different things, but is there something in particular that over the last few months would have made a big positive difference, that would have, made your life a lot easier over the last few months? Was it that support being able to be available to you, or?
Oh, that's invaluable. People coming into the house is invaluable. A visit to an older person isn't only for that day. You see, we had a link in our Zoom service. We had a link of 5 old ladies in a care home down in Newcastle Emlyn, and our secretary linked them in with our service. And Mrs. Betty Davis, our old minister's, emeritus minister's wife, she and 4 friends joined us in the service, and that they talked about that all the week. Well, when somebody comes in to see you live and you have a visitor, and it buoys you up, you're preparing because someone's coming. You have the delight of somebody being with you, and then you have the pleasure of thinking of the conversation afterwards. And then you've got something to speak on the phone to other people about. You can say, oh, so-and-so called to see me. You've got news. I'm like a Greek. I am. If somebody comes in and gives me news, I'm listening all the time because it's something I don't know and I want to take on board. And that is the sort of thing that's been invaluable. I would have already, I don't know if I told you, but not being able to drive is a huge difference for Ken and I. We can't go anywhere. I'm a bit of a handful to take out, I must admit. But we would have liked to have had a little, somebody said, would you like a car ride and a tea out? I would have loved that. But that didn't happen. So what? Well, we managed on our own. But it would have been nice to have had. But everybody was so busy catching up and trying to think now, can I do this safely and that safely? They don't sort of think to themselves then, when they've got a full life of their own, but other lives are perhaps a little bit less full, and nice things could be done quite easily just for the want of thought. But there we are, we're not all the same. Young people's lives are very full.
Well, and that's what I was going to move on to for my final question, really. So you mentioned in your story in the report that lots of younger people had turned to you for emotional support. So what advice would you give to younger people who are going through this now and maybe just starting their way in the world?
Well, if I gave a young person advice, I'd be very presumptuous because they seem to know everything, don't they? Sort of when they're young, they feel as if people at our age are over the hill. I mean, I know when I was a teenager and a young married woman, I thought my mother was really she didn't know anything at all. When I was 18, I thought how stupid my mother was. By the time I was 20, I thought she was brilliant. And I actually got better all my life. But what could you tell a young person? Well, nothing ever stays the same. What the 18-year-olds are going through now, with being unable to take up their university places, or their way in life that they had planned has gone to pieces. Well, that happened to a generation, the people of young people of the 1930s. I mean, at 8-year-old, my husband and I, we didn't have a school. I went to 5 schools in 3 years. Well, it doesn't stop you if you want to learn, if you want to go somewhere. When you're young, you see, you're like sort of going into the Nile Delta, aren't you? You're coming in some way or other, and you don't know the river that you're going to get into, the big river of life. And you want everything to happen at once. It's not going to happen at once. It's going to happen in a developmental way. And what is happening now will move on. There will be a new sort of arrangement in society, but it will be there. And just like the young people who are coming along in the 50s and 60s, they are going to be the ones who are going to need the skills to rebuild. And you can grab your skills from anywhere. You haven't got to wait to be shown. Good heavens, anybody can pick up a book and learn. And you can go on WikiHow. I can go on WikiHow. I found heaps of things to do on WikiHow.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But you can go on to things like that. And you can do things for yourself. You haven't got to wait to have things put into your hands. And when you're young, don't think that everyone wants to know your opinion, because most people don't, you know. And you're not the center of the universe. You are the center of your universe, but you're not really. Nobody bothers about you out of your own little crowd. You're very small coal indeed. Now, if you can take that on board and read a good newspaper so that you get conversational powers, and walk and swim, 2 things that you can do cheaply all your life. And realize that if God meant you to have a mobile phone in your hand all the time, he'd have made a little pocket there for it to be put so that you could do things with 2 hands. What is the point of a selfie? You know what you look like. If you're a boy, I would say to him, don't have an eagle tattooed across on your chest, because by the time you're 70, you look like a dying swan. Or similarly, a rose for a young lady in a sort of in a strategic position, because you'll be wrinkled. It'll have to be ironed every morning. By the time you're old, a tattoo will look ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And don't make the mistake that I did. Don't start going out with a partner who was about 5'9" and end up with somebody 6'2.5", or you're never going to have room in the bed. What else advice can I give them? Just be yourself.
I think that's all good advice.
Personality. Find your way forward.
That's brilliant. I think that's advice we can all take on board, really. So yeah, I'm aware of the time now, so I think we're going to have to call that, bring that to an end. So thank you ever so much, Margaret. I can see the comments that have been ticking up, and I know you've inspired lots of people today, and they've really valued hearing from you. You know, in your story, you said good things also happened against expectation. And I think one of the best things to come out of all of this is being able to meet with you today and speak with you and hear from you. And I know that the 300 odd people that we've got involved today will have taken a huge amount from that. So thank you ever so much, Margaret. Thank you.
I'm a very ordinary lady, Richard, and there are heaps about. If only people would knock on our front doors, we'd welcome them in with open arms. Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Thank you. Take care of yourself.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.